all about Scorpio part 12. Okay, right now we're going to feature one of the famous Scorpios. His name is Seth Macfarlane. Yep. I chose him as the Scorpio spotlight for the week, I guess, because he really possesses a lot of qualities of a typical Scorpio guy. And aside from the fact that I really like him, I find him so hot. But yeah, he is actually the guy behind the hit show Family Guy. Okay, so as you can hear in the background, that's actually one of his songs. You're the cream in my coffee. And yes, he's very multi-talented. And I want to talk about him. I tried to dig some information about Seth Macfarlane, and I tried to watch, some interviews. And you know what? I tell you, I just said to myself, oh my God, he really is a Scorpio, And he's also friends with a lot of Scorpio people out there as well. And been involved in a relationship with a typical Scorpio woman as well, So that's why I chose him as a Scorpio spotlight for the All About Scorpio Part 12. All right. Anyway, for those of you guys who does not know really who Seth Macfarlane is, okay, it says here, more than a writer, director, musical actor, Macfarlane is a force of nature, the man behind of the longest running, most censorship-defying stuff on network TV. The spike on Macfarlane's Scorpio tail is sharp, poisonous, and nearly deadly. It is no surprise that the creator of Family Guy is a Scorpio. Okay, I'm going to lower down the volume here. Talking about Family Guy, I really fell in love with the show. And, at first I didn't know that the creator of that show is actually a Scorpio. But I tell you, every time I watch it, I'm really laughing. And I was so shocked because of the topic, and it's as if, Macfarlane wasn't really scared about what the critics or what other people would say about his work, because it tackles a lot of, sensitive subject. And I said to myself, okay, this guy's really a Scorpio because, he's fearless. He doesn't care what other people would think, He would just put out his ideas out there and, he's not really afraid of what other people would comment about it or would think about it. So, that's one of those things that makes me, say that, okay, this guy is really, a Scorpio. He is fearless, really fearless, because a lot of people would definitely not tackle those sensitive subjects, but here goes Macfarlane, making fun of some sensitive, topics out there or subjects like bestiality, Jesus Christ, or religion, and politics. So I was so amazed, like, okay, here goes a guy who's really not scared to put out his ideas out there and make fun of it, And of course, for those of you guys who watched Family Guy, you would also see a lot of actors, or rather roles there, like Quagmire. Quagmire is he's oh my gosh, he is really a sex addict, and the fact that Macfarlane always talks about a lot of, topics about sex at the same time, it makes me really think like, okay, this guy's a typical Scorpio guy, highly sexual, but he really is good, I find it so funny, and I find the guy so talented, really, really talented. I tried to watch some of the interviews about him and his hobbies, and I found out as well that he was, really into animation and really into Flintstones as a kid, drawing. And according to him, when he was, a young kid, he's pretty much not really the detached type, but he's pretty much a loner. He does have friends, according to this interview with Larry King. And Larry King is also Scorpio, by the way. So he's a good friend of Seth Macfarlane too. So both of them, watching the interview is really funny here. Two Scorpio guys asking a lot of questions, making fun, and conversing, and they're there's a lot of, Scorpio energy out there. I know it sounds funny because we're talking about Scorpios all the time, and, but for those people who are really into astrology, and for those people who really does understand that there is definitely some general characteristics for each sun sign, you would definitely know what I'm talking about, right? Like, you would you can tell that those two people are, they possess a lot of qualities of a Scorpio. According to Macfarlane, going back, he does have friends, but he spends a lot of time alone, and trying to understand, without the internet stuff, being famous around that time, to worm out some information. He tries to dig some information about how can, he make a comic show or, something very successful one day, because he's really into Flintstones, Woody Woodpecker, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. So he's really into animation as a young kid, and he became successful in his craft. That is really a sign that he's a Scorpio, because he's very determined in his craft. He's very focused. And I also saw that side of him where he's really much in love with not astrology, but I think science, right? I think there's a show. I'm not totally sure, but I think it's Cosmos. And it's funny because I tried to read this interview by Esquire, and I was so like, by Esquire.com. It's actually an interview that I saw online, and he was asked, like, what's your sign? And you know what his response was? He said, well, that's a complex question. If you want to pretend for a moment that astrology isn't complete bullshit, when astrology was conceived, something like 2,000 years ago, I learned this from Carl Sagan. And Carl Sagan, by the way, is a famous American astronomer and cosmologist who is also a Scorpio. So there you go. So how Scorpio is Seth MacFarlane, huh? I guess you can really tell that he is really a Scorpio, aside from the looks, aside from the humor and all that. He can be very sarcastic. He's fearless. He talks a lot of sex all the time, even in his show. And at the same time, he's very private. That's another thing that I saw. And while I was watching the Larry King show, when he was interviewed, I'm not sure if that was last year or a few years ago, but while watching that interview, I was like, wow, he really is a Scorpio, because he's very private. When the topic was all about relationships, he was like very much, he's not comfortable, definitely not really comfortable talking about his relationships. I think there was this part during the Larry King live show that was 2 years ago, when he was asked, like, about wedding, about, getting married someday. I think Seth answered something like, yeah, I would like to see myself being married, one day. He does see that, because he's very much focused on his job, which is, again, a typical Scorpio, Scorpios are actually very workaholic, especially if they're really into their job, they're very passionate with their craft, okay? So I think there was also one thing about Seth MacFarlane being hospitalized because of exhaustion, because he's working really so hard. And then when the topic about relationships, about being, married to a girl someday, he was, he seriously answered like, yeah, I do see myself being married, one day. And then Larry King, being the Scorpio, the probing Scorpio that he is, he actually asked Seth MacFarlane the question, like, have you ever been in love? And Seth MacFarlane, answered politely and said, yeah, yes, sir. I've been in love. I mean, I was, in love in the past. And Larry King answered, or did a follow-up question like, what happened there? What happened to your relationship? And, Seth being uncomfortable talking about his relationship status, about the girls that he dated, probably, he actually tried to make fun out of it. The typical sick and twisted Scorpio humor, and said she was an Al-Qaeda and I'm an American. And, there wasn't really much information right after that. So that's the thing that I'm telling you. Scorpios are very private about their relationship. They're really private people. So that is one example why I said that he really is, one of the examples why I said he really is a Scorpio. He possesses a lot of Scorpio traits. It's really, amazing because this guy is the highest paid, he was a highest paid producer or writer, I guess, in the industry of animation. And he has been, the youngest executive producer at the age of 20 plus, I guess, if it's not 24, 25. And being the wealthy man that he is right now, he remains very low profile, I think he owns a BMW, but Larry King was like asking him, that's like every day, you don't have a Ferrari, he's not that type of a guy, which is really a Scorpio. They're really low profile. And what I also notice about Seth MacFarlane being a Scorpio is he's very, aside from the fact that he's very focused on his career, very passionate with his job. He's fearless, tackling the topic of, some people would not talk about it, but he was, fearless about it, and he would really put out his ideas out there, whether or not, people they're going to like it or not, He's a genius. And aside from that, I noticed that Seth MacFarlane is also the shy type of guy. He's funny and all that, but, he's very shy. Typical Scorpio guy as well. He's really shy. And another thing that, makes me think, like, okay, he really is a Scorpio, aside from the fact that he's also into science. And, he tackles other subject about philosophy, about religion, although he's an atheist, I believe. One thing that I notice about this guy being a Scorpio is that he is very multi-talented, He likes to explore a lot of things. He's a writer, he's a producer, he is a director, and at the same time, he is into astronomy, I guess. I think there's a show about cosmos. I'm not sure. I have to double check about that. But he really is multi-talented. He's a singer. He's a good singer. That's why earlier I was playing one of his songs, Music is Better Than Words. I think there's another song, Laura. I'm going to play that later on. He is into Frank Sinatra. He loves Sound of Music, very classic. Typical Scorpio. A lot of Scorpios are kind of like that, okay? So there you go. I guess those are, one of the things why I think Seth MacFarlane is indeed a Scorpio, aside from the fact that he talks about sex. Even the movie Ted, come on, look at that. It's so funny. I mean, how original is that? The idea of putting up a teddy bear, a talking teddy bear, who's also pretty much highly sexual. And then, having some sessions, some marijuana sessions with his friend, is also in love with a human being. And, it's really funny. It's really, his dark humor is twisted, sarcastic humor is indeed a Scorpio. And speaking of dating and relationships, what I've said earlier, it's not really comfortable talking about it, but I think he was involved in a relationship with Game of Thrones actress Emilia Clarke. I really don't know her that much, okay? But I found out that she's actually also a Scorpio. They both have the same birthday, actually, October 26th. And I saw some pictures of them hanging out, having some lunch together. And they're very sweet and very, dreamy about each other. But then they split, I think. So there you go. If you've watched the recordings all about Scorpio, the previous recordings, what I think as a Scorpio woman about our fellow Scorpios out there, I've mentioned there that Scorpios are very private about their relationships. They really don't talk much about it. And at the same time, Scorpios goes well with other water signs too. Even a fellow Scorpio, they do. But the thing is, they can be really totally okay, like it's a heaven and hell relationship. But then once they disagreed on some point, at some point about some certain, topic that none of them is going to back off, then there you go. It spells a lot of trouble. But when I saw that he was dating a fellow Scorpio, Emilia Clarke, I was like, wow, okay, all right. But then they split. Probably something happened there. Anyway, we're not going to talk about other entertainment stuff. So we're just really focusing more about Seth MacFarlane, how Scorpio he is. And there are a lot of celebrities out there like Leonardo DiCaprio, Owen Wilson, who else? Matthew McConaughey, and other actors out there. I hope I pronounced Matthew's name correctly. It's hard to pronounce his name. Anyway, there are a lot of Scorpio, famous Scorpio actors and actresses out there. But one thing is for sure, kindly, take note of this. Take a look at the eyes of a Scorpio. It's funny because Seth MacFarlane is a Scorpio. Look at his eyes. It's kind of chinky, but very piercing. And it's somewhat similar to the eyes of Leonardo DiCaprio, who's also a Scorpio, right? So there's really something about a Scorpio eyes, and I've mentioned this 1,000 times, okay, already in my previous recordings. There's really something about, the Scorpio eyes. It's going to bore into your soul. Very piercing, very magnetic. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed it. And this one is really, really short. It's just all about Family Guy Seth MacFarlane. I hope you enjoyed a lot. And I'm not gonna. Make the comments really public, but if you have some comments about it, feel free to hit me a message. You can also find me at Pinterest, but tell me your thoughts. Let me know what you think, especially to those Scorpio people, listening to this recording. How Scorpio is Seth MacFarlane, aside from being the highly sexual, original type of person, very, multi-talented and all that. How Scorpio he is really for you, okay? He's oozing with a lot of sex appeal, that's for sure. A lot of talents, and he's very, sarcastic with his jokes as well. A lot of things. That's why I said, okay, this guy, should be featured for in the Scorpio spotlight. Scorpio celebs out there. So there you go. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. And right now, I'm going to play in the background one of his songs, Laura, okay, by Seth MacFarlane. He really has a great voice. I like his voice a lot. Very classic. And it's funny because being a Scorpio myself, I'm also into classical music. I'm also into, music that is related to Old Blue Eyes, Frank Sinatra. And it was also written in one article that Seth is not really into the newer type of music. He's more into the classical type of music. So, yeah, there you go.
Laura.
There you go. That's Seth MacFarlane, our Scorpio Spotlight for the day, or for the week, whatever.
In the misty light, footsteps that you hear down the hall,
and another thing before I end this recording, okay, let me just lower down the music a little bit, but again, that's Seth MacFarlane. One thing that I could relate to Seth MacFarlane very much, aside from we're both Scorpios, okay, but also because I'm into animation. I'm also into drawings, but not really like I loved to draw as a kid, but I really am into voice acting. So ever since I was a young kid, I do understand that part where Seth MacFarlane told Larry King that there was, part of his childhood where he's very secluded. Like, there are times that he socializes with other people or kids that is of his age, but there are times he's very much into solitude. Like, he's really trying to analyze how animation works, how does it work, and all that. He's very much passionate about drawing and writing and all that stuff. As a kid, I was also into voice acting, really trying to understand the, animation part, mostly Japanese though, and trying to understand how to try to change your voice, become a man for a minute or what, things like that. So I could definitely relate with him being a Scorpio myself. So yeah, that's why I love this guy so much. I love the humor. I love his brains. He's a genius, really. So I hope you really enjoyed listening to this audio recording about Seth MacFarlane. See, I'm into him. Okay, yeah, I know. I admit I'm into him, really. But thank you so much for listening. I'm going to post other interesting topics, and probably another Scorpio Spotlight actress or actors or other famous people out there pretty soon. Anyway, I gotta go. Bye.